some of the most rewarding moments when I mix friend groups is when I see two people making a new connection.
Me too.
You know,
I love it.
When it has nothing to do with my interests, you know, like I might know someone from dance and I might know someone from school, and then all of a sudden they really both like climbing. And it's like, okay, now they're starting to go climbing together, and now there's a new connection. And that to me is like such an awesome thing, you know? And I think if Finns would mix groups more often, that would give the opportunity for that type of situation to happen.
You're listening to Foreigners in Finland, a podcast that explores the experiences of people who moved here from abroad. My name is Felipe Silva. I'm originally from New York, and I'm accompanied by my co-host Jarrod Luxton from Melbourne, Australia. We talk about why people come here, some challenges foreigners face, and all the incredible things this country has to offer. We hope our discussions help anyone new to Finland get accustomed to life here and bring new perspective to Finns.
Welcome back, everyone, to Foreigners in Finland. Today, we're talking about friendships in Finland. And the point of this podcast today is just to kind of share some of the natural customs that Finns have with their friendships, what are some kind of common practices that they have, and share some of our experiences with some of our Finnish friends. And hopefully it gives you a better idea on how to befriend a Finnish friend and kind of not to take things maybe the wrong way if you experience something weird. And so, yeah, we're just going to unpack some of these nuances within our Finnish friendships.
Yeah, we're going to talk about sort of things from both perspectives here. So I think for Finns listening, maybe you can understand what is weird to a foreigner, and for those foreigners maybe that are going to move to Finland, hopefully this helps you out. I think this would have helped me out.
You'll know what to expect.
Basically. You're going to make so many Finnish friends.
Yeah. All right. I think it goes without saying, but everyone is unique in their own way. They have their own personalities. So this is by no means an episode where we're going to throw a blanket over everyone. We're just going to share maybe some of the most common practices that we've seen with Finnish people. And yeah, all with the objective of helping you make the most out of your Finnish friendships.
Yeah, I mean, every episode I think that we do is almost a bit like this. We're sharing our experiences. It doesn't mean it's in no way comprehensive or representative of every Finnish person. We're not trying to put Finland into a box here. Yeah. What we are trying to do though is help others and also help other foreigners maybe engage here in Finland, but help also Finns see what kind of things go through a foreigner's head.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
Yeah,
I think that maybe I could start by saying, for me, I've always been a person that likes to mix friend groups. And I think that was a quite surprising thing when I came to Finland. I noticed that Finns really didn't do this very often. Like if you hang out with your school colleagues, it would be very rare that then you'd invite your work colleagues, for example, or maybe some colleagues that you have from some of your hobbies. Maybe it's because Finns are a bit mindful that they don't want to create some awkward experience for anyone, or maybe it's because when they meet a friend, they really want to connect and have a deeper conversation, and maybe that's not always possible if you have such a wide variety of different friends there. So I think those are some of the aspects. Like, I don't know, Jarrod, have you experienced that before?
Yeah, I've definitely experienced this, and I think you kind of hit it on the head with a few of those things. I definitely reckon that Finns are mindful of like others in the environment, especially if they're the one organising the get-together. They don't want to put people into an awkward situation and have that sort of dreaded deathly silence fall like over the group for too long. So I think there is some sort of recognition that it could be, difficult for people to get on if they don't know each other. But I also think Finns enjoy or at least quite a lot of Finnish people enjoy like the stability and like just feeling like they know what's happening in the social situation. So it's kind of less of let's throw everyone together and see what happens, and more of a like, we've hung out now together for 5 years. We know how tonight's going to be. It's probably going to be pretty nice. Let's just roll with it.
Yeah.
So I think that one's an interesting one. I also think that Finnish people, in my experience, they have these groups that maybe exist for a long period of time from when that friendship started. So whether it was in high school, whether it was in university, maybe through work, I feel like these groups get established, and that's maybe not so different from back in Australia. But I think the difference is that, like you said, they're not always mixed. So maybe the group that you have from high school, you all hang out together and you only hang out together, but you don't really know each other's friends very well. Maybe you don't know each other's partners very well. It's kind of like an exclusive hangout group.
Yeah.
And I've definitely noticed that. And not that it's bad, but it definitely sort of restricts access for maybe foreigners who are trying to break into those kind of groups, because I guess generally foreigners haven't gone to school, high school here. Maybe you've come for the university, but maybe those groups are already established. It's interesting.
Yeah.
So I think in general, it's good to be aware of it. And maybe for Finnish people listening, maybe if you recognize some of these things, maybe sort of challenge it. Maybe ask, hey, why am I doing this?
Yeah, I would share that some of the most rewarding moments when I mix friend groups is when I see two people making a new connection.
Me too.
You know,
I love it.
When it has nothing to do with my interests, you know, like I might know someone from dance and I might know someone from school, and then all of a sudden they really both like climbing. And it's like, okay, now they're starting to go climbing together and now there's a new connection. And that to me is like such an awesome thing, you know? And I think if Finns would mix groups more often, that would give the opportunity for that type of situation to happen.
Yeah, I can tell a story. It was actually my birthday recently, and unfortunately Felipe couldn't come because he was sick. But I did actually one of those sort of mixing of the groups. I invited a bunch of people that I knew from different, like, sort of, I guess, experiences here in Finland. And the night was great. Like, of course, at the start, it takes a little bit to sort of warm up a bit, maybe a couple of beers to help lubricate the conversation. But in general, I think it was a great success. And I want to see more of it. I'm going to keep organizing things like that.
Absolutely.
And I want to see more.
Yeah. I think you brought up an interesting point about the partners as well, because I think I've noticed that it's not so common for someone to hang out with their partner's friends, whereas back in New York, it's like the people who are in couples, like all of them kind of like hang out together and they do like these activities together.
It's a package deal.
It's like a package deal, right? But like here it's like, no, I have my own friends and we are interested in this certain activity, so this is what we're doing today. And, you know, like, don't take it personally. It's just like, and it almost seems like the partner doesn't even want to go. You know, it's like, they're like, nah, do your thing, which I think is cool in many ways, you know. But I think if there was a bit of like mixing a bit more, it could
be like a net positive.
Yeah, a net positive, yeah.
Yeah, I've had an interesting experience. I've actually been quite well integrated with my partner's friends. So I think it goes both ways. It depends on like the different factors. But I would say maybe that experience also comes down to like the independence here in Finland. So maybe each person in the relationship maintains a bit of independence, whether that's with their own friendship groups. And I would hazard a guess that could play a role.
Yeah.
But like I said, I think I can sort of share an experience that I've been reasonably well integrated into like my partner's friendship group. But it's interesting. Like I've definitely noticed that they are kept more separate in other situations too.
Yeah. Have you noticed that sometimes it's a bit difficult to make plans with Finns because they have their whole month planned with some other friends? Like, have you had that type of experience?
Yeah. Finnish people, I think in general, and I'm like, I don't want to keep stereotyping, but in general, I think the planning is strong with the Finnish people. And I think this comes down to stability and like things being like expected. Spontaneous, like I think there definitely are like quite a lot of spontaneous like Finns, but in general, I think if you're wanting to make a successful plan with someone, it's better to tell them the week before rather than 2 hours before, because your chances of them coming are very different.
Yeah.
But actually, for me, that quite suits me. I think I'm actually quite a well-structured person, and I try and like squeeze quite a lot into my week. So I'm not free for quite a lot of the week. So for me, actually, that kind of suits. I don't actually mind that too much in Finland. Does it sort of affect you? How does it?
The thing for me is like I haven't really experienced that too much, but I have some Finnish friends who express their frustration with that. It's like every time I want to hang out with this friend, it's like they're busy for the next month, you know? And then when that day comes around, it's like maybe we don't even hang out because like, yeah.
For some reason.
Yeah.
Do you think they're actually busy, or do you think that they're having beers on the couch
in
their
else?
Underwear? What's that called in Finnish? What's the word for that? Can you remember?
Kalsarikännys.
Kalsarikännys.
No, I think there's something about planning and trying to make the most out of, say, for example, your summer. Like you have a lot of plans for the summer and you're meeting with certain people, and Finns are kind of like thinking ahead of time, like, oh, I want to prioritize this friendship, so I want to make sure I lock in a plan with them, you know? But again, spontaneity does exist. And I think it's a great thing when you can just call up a friend and say, hey, what are you up to? And then just be like, okay, let's go get a beer, or let's go for a bike ride, whatever.
Yeah. Totally depends on the person. But
Yeah.
I will also add there that I think if you're in a work environment and you're wanting to do some sort of like after work catch up or some sort of like maybe go for beers or something,
You better plan that.
That shit needs to be organized.
Yeah. Otherwise,
you better get it in the calendar about 30 days before.
Yeah.
Like kind of my experience is that back in Australia, if you're having a party, it's kind of free for all, like just the more the merrier.
Right.
But I don't think the more the merrier is applicable in Finland.
Yeah, and I think maybe that has something to do with the weather, because if the majority of the year it's like pretty cold, so you're hanging out inside, and maybe it's a bit more of an intimate space, whereas in Australia you're outside most of the time and it's much easier just to invite whoever. And I think the attitude changes here in Finland. In the summertime it's like, oh, let's go for a picnic, everyone's invited, just call whoever, and it's much easier than to mix friend groups. So maybe that could be part of the reason, you know?
I think so. That makes sense. It's funny, in Australia, if it's raining, there's a high chance the party's cancelled.
Right.
because the party was going to be outside.
Right, yeah.
We don't want to be hanging out inside.
Yeah,
maybe that's it. But I think like for foreigners who are coming to Finland, don't be like feel shunned or something, that if people aren't inviting you maybe to some sort of party or gathering, because these gatherings sort of might have a bit of a higher threshold for people. Like you might need to be better, like quite close friends with someone to be invited over.
Yeah. And if you think about it, it's like if you're going to invite someone into your home and there's already quite a few people, it's maybe not the easiest thing to just like keep inviting people inside. And I would say that it's actually quite rare to be invited into someone's apartment here in Finland. Like I still have some Finnish mates and I haven't even been to their apartment, you know?
Yeah.
Which
would be weird, at least from Australia, and I guess probably the same in the States too.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. Actually, I've just had one thought of maybe why I think, maybe one more reason that Finnish people could be more selective with who they're sort of bringing to these gatherings. Maybe also the language. Like, for instance, if they know that the party is going to be mainly sort of going in Finnish, mainly going in Swedish, they don't want to bring somebody who they think might get awkward because they're not involved in the conversation. Right. Or if the rest of the people then feel like it's a bit of a drag having to sort of change language. So that's actually maybe a consideration too.
Yeah, that's another great point.
Yeah. And I guess, of course, as a foreigner, the best thing you can do is kind of learn the language here. But also, if you experience that, maybe you could have a word to your like Finnish mate and say, "Hey, look, I'm fine with just sort of like I can just listen to Finnish, and maybe I can jump into the conversation in English if that's easier for you." That could be one option, and just make it clear that you're not feeling uncomfortable if that's the case.
I would say most people don't really mind switching to English, but I would think the host then is probably thinking about that a little bit. Like they don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable.
And that's so considerate. Like they're actually thinking like, okay, like are people going to enjoy my party? So I think it comes from like a nice place, and hopefully foreigners can be conscious of that, so they don't feel like they're getting shunned for some reason.
For sure.
Yeah,
I think it'd probably be easier, like to make plans with your Finnish friend in maybe a smaller group, where okay, the majority of people are speaking English, and be proactive, because I think Finns also like hanging out with foreigners because they get to have a different flavor of hangouts,
Yeah.
A lot of Finns are, if Finns are hanging out with the same group of people for the past 10 years, like they're excited to have a new friend group that's from abroad. From my experience, at least, I think Finns really appreciate that and they're excited by it.
Yeah, I think so too. I think your point, be proactive. I really want to emphasize that.
Yeah.
Because at least in my experience, Finnish people really want to be friends. Like they're generally friendly people. I think where the stereotypes come from, where like Finns are quiet and maybe like not friendly, but just not like sort of outgoing, is because they're not always the one to make the first move. But at least if I'm from Australia, you're from the States, maybe the culture is more about making like the first move in the social contacts like that. So I would give some advice to people. If you're here in Finland and you're feeling like that you want to make some new connections, you could be the one to go out and make that happen. And I think the response you'll get will be surprising.
Yeah, and I think a really important point that we should make here is that once you befriend a Finn, like they really are a true friend, and they're gonna have your back. And if they say they're gonna hang out with you at a certain time, they're gonna hang out with you. If you need their help for something, they're gonna help you, and they just really become like a really good mate of yours. So I think that's one of the most positive things about a Finnish friendship.
Yeah, I would echo almost all of that. I think it's really nice that I think when you have some sort of friendship with people here in Finland, that your words somehow seem to matter a bit more. I feel like if you're friends with someone and they tell you something like, I'm going to do this thing, or we're going to catch up and do this thing, that has a bit more meaning. I can contrast that to in Australia, where I guess people like to talk and they say things and things like maybe the conversation flows a bit easier. I would say in Australia, it's easier to talk with someone who's not your friend per se, just someone that you meet. But then maybe the depth once you become friends is sort of limited somehow. So I think the comparison that I would make is here in Finland, it can be a bit more difficult to maybe make that first connection because of the things we've just spoken about. But when you do, you go deeper.
Right.
And that's nice. I really like that. I like being able to sort of go to my friends, and when someone says, yeah, we're going to catch up next week, they text you and say, okay, like, where are we catching up? Like, that's cool. That's really cool. They don't just forget.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. And then you do get invited to the mökki and to different, like, more personal spaces of theirs, you know?
And there's
which
a
I think is
feeling,
awesome.
and there's a feeling there that when you do get invited, it feels good, doesn't it?
It does, for sure.
Because you know not just anyone's getting invited.
Yeah.
So it kind of feels like, you know, the friendships maybe have some sort of deeper connection.
Yeah.
I would say. Of course, you have deep connections with people in Australia, but I would say that it's maybe more obvious and more rewarding somehow here in Finland because you know you've worked for it.
Yeah. Especially since you might not have as many of those Finnish friends here.
Yeah.
You know, it's very unique friendship.
Yeah. And maybe I could bring something up here too, whereas I think if you are a foreigner who's searching or thinking about how you can make more friends here in Finland, I think one thing that Finns get hesitant about is some sort of situation where there's like nothing to talk about. It's just sort of being social for no reason. I would suggest if you want to sort of make friends with someone, find something to do with them. And I guess this is just good advice also from outside of Finland as
just
well.
Just
in general. But I think if you can find some sort of activity, some sort of sport, some sort of something like that, that's when you can make the connection, because it's not like you're just catching up to talk. You're catching up to do something, and then the conversation comes from that.
Yeah, the conversation
and
will
there's
flow.
always something to talk about. You can talk about how the game went. You can talk about how the hike was. You can talk about how the camping was. And I think from my experience, that lets Finnish people chill out because there's some sort of something to talk about. It's not just like you're going to sit there and be like, all right, now I feel awkward because I can't think of something.
But I would say that Finns are usually quite comfortable with that quietness and that moment of silence, you know? I think that's the quite common stereotype that Finns are comfortable in the silence.
Finns are, but they also notice when foreigners aren't.
And then that might make them
And that kind of makes it awkward. I feel like, because I've at least noticed that, because when I first came to Finland, I wasn't comfortable with silence at all.
Yeah.
Still not really. But I think Finns, in the company of other Finns, they know that the silence is not a problem. But if me, as an Australian, has just been filling the space with air for 10 minutes, and then it suddenly drops in silence, and I feel like if I'm with someone Finnish who might be perceptive, they might feel that I'm a bit uncomfortable, and then that suddenly becomes a bit of pressure to speak. So
yeah, gotcha.
I think that's what I'm kind of getting at. Maybe in some way Finns are sort of perceptive of these things a bit more than maybe what I'm used to. They're perceptive of people feeling uncomfortable and perceptive of how others feel in a certain situation.
Your point of like doing an activity with a Finnish friend reminded me, like, the best way to actually meet Finnish people is to go do a hobby, you know, like go try something new. If you like climbing, go climbing, you know, talk to somebody there. If you go do basically whatever you enjoy doing, and you're bound to meet someone who has that similar interest, you know. Of course, like these meetups at university or like parties, it's always an opportunity to meet people, but it's not as likely that you're going to make this really genuine connection as opposed if you're doing something that you already like doing with someone, you know?
And then you already share it, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the first step towards friendship. You have something to bond and share over, whether it's a hobby or something else. Like, so you've already sort of gotten over that first barrier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. One interesting thing actually, when you do make friends with a Finnish person, is that it can take some time to like get past the surface level. I think that's kind of normal, even from Australia. But generally, like when when the Finns do open up and get personal, it's interesting. Sometimes they can really open up and get personal, especially if you've had a couple of drinks, you're kind of just chilling. Sometimes it's like, wow, okay, this person's really starting to share with me. And maybe because they haven't been sharing so much previously, it's like super obvious. You're like, oh, okay, this person's like telling me stuff now.
Yeah. It's like, I was not expecting all of that. All of a sudden, it just starts flowing. Yeah.
But it's cool because it's almost like a way you can really see the trust being built.
Right.
It's like the person maybe didn't feel comfortable sharing it before, like they didn't feel like, and then once you kind of prove that you're a nice person, I guess in some way, then they open up, which is cool.
Right.
It's cool. I think it's maybe preferable to people walking around as a complete open book all the time.
Yeah.
It's kind of waiting until they feel comfortable and then sharing some more depth.
What are like some of the best ways that you made friends here in Finland?
Well, I know we've just spoken that like Finns go to uni and make their groups of friends. Honestly, I think if you have a way to go and study like I did or like we did, that's really the best way to like meet people, because everyone there, also the Finns, are like in the mindset that they're trying to make friends. I think once you get beyond that stage and maybe you're coming to Finland for work, that's when you have to work a bit harder, because you're not in the environment where everyone is sort of searching for new friendship circles or like ready to try out like, you know, new friendships. But for me, it's been university, hobbies. Those are the two big ones.
Yeah.
What about you? What's your experience?
I would say like in university, I made a lot of friends that were a mix between foreigners and Finnish people. I don't know if I stayed in touch with so many of my Finnish friends at university. I still see them once in a while, but I'd say the majority of the people that I stayed connected with were from hobbies. So like I met people through hobbies, and then those are the people that I kind of like stayed connected with, and then meeting their friends. For example, I think summertime is the best time to meet new people because more people are out. And picnics, we discussed about bullish picnics, you know. it's
very
like,
bullish.
It's a great like time to meet new people, you know.
The attitudes are different. The attitudes are different in the summer. Like people are just more open. Like I think if you came to Finland the first time in the winter and you saw everyone walking with their like bippo and like the jacket on, walking around,
no one wants
like,
to be bothered.
Like, oh my god, no one's even looking at me.
Yeah.
But in the summer, people are way more chilled.
Yeah,
so be mindful of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, I think. What do you think? That about wraps it up?
Yeah. Look, the one last thing that I'll say there is that also if you're coming to Finland and you're a foreigner, don't be afraid to like meet with other foreigners. I think some of the best mates that I've met here in Finland have also been foreigners, and you kind of bonded together because you're like kind of in the same situation. And I feel like some people when they travel, they're a bit against that. They really want to make friends with like people from the country that they're in. That's great, and of course it gives you a bit more stability because it's more likely those people will probably stay there. But don't limit yourself. I think it's nice to share your experience, and you can always get stuff off your chest when you're surrounded by other foreigners in the country that you're in.
Yeah, for sure.
I would say also try to embrace that too.
Yeah, embrace it. But then also be mindful that if you're making friends with foreigners who are here just studying, they're going to leave at some point.
And that sucks.
Yeah, and then you might have to start over again. But there are a lot of foreigners here that are staying, you know, that actually have a job here. And yeah, some of my best mates are foreigners.
Looking at you.
Yeah, look at
I
me.
feel like if you make friends with people, maybe they're more likely to stay.
Yeah. That's another point.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess that about wraps it up. Friendships in Finland, there's sort of many facets to it, but this has been our experience. So if you want to share yours, just get down in the comment section. We've been reading them all, trying to respond. So
Yeah. Let us know what have been some of the best ways that you've made friendships here in Finland, and what do you make of your own Finnish friendships?
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Peace.